Hey guys, how's it going? I'm back looking to solve one tactic problem here. I got my rating on this site up to 1982, so I'm hoping I get a decent problem here, solve it at a good time, and can finally break that 2K barrier that I've never gotten to before. So here we go. So we got black to move here. Just looking at it, it seems like a pretty nice position to have. Normally in these problems, you don't just start with a queen and rook battery pointed at the king. So hopefully I can find some ideas, attacking ideas, and make this work. Um, the material is even, but it is interesting because both sides got three pawns, but they're on opposite sides of the board. So um, I have the this black pawn here that is furthest advanced. So that's a pretty big asset. Um, so I got this pawn. My king is a little well. Both kings are on this diagonal, so a little bit sensitive. His queen can get to these dark squares. Um, what else am I working with right now? I've got this knight that's sort of in the way, um, and yeah, it's kind of blocking my battery that wants to come down. So it's kind of hard to see where I actually want to go with it. But maybe I'm not trying to go anywhere with it. So let's look around for some more ideas first. I can freely move my queen because my rook will still defend this knight, or I could also move the rook. Um, one idea is to try and move the rook to d8, looking to come into d1, help him with the pawn and make a queen here, or at the very least trade off. Um, and then use my queen and knight to clean up. So um, kind of interesting that white. So it looks like white just moved their queen forward. So this knight must have come from somewhere and been planted here to hit the queen, which made it move. So instead of the queen grabbing this dangerous pawn, white must have thought this pawn wasn't an issue, and they stepped it forward, decided not to take. So yeah, this pawn or a piece teaming up with it could be them neglecting that could be the key to this problem here. So so yeah, what are some good places to move my queen? I'd like to move my queen somewhere sick. Get some double attacks going. Um so there's e7. Yeah, I'm literally just looking around the board at squares that if I could get my queen there, it would do multiple things. E7 is achievable in one move, and it would attack the e4 pawn and could be brought to that dark square diagonal where the kings rest. So queen e7, looking at this, looking at that. And if I would get my queen here, check, knight covers this square, and these are covered by the rook if with discovered stuff. So, and if the queen tried to block after a queen e7, some token move, check, my knight would be able to hop in and get involved. Then the rook's coming in, uh, starting to look sexy. So yeah, so that's interesting. And e7 coming to c5 would also be a way to attack and defend the pawn. Um, e7 also would kind of x-ray, keep an eye on my knight, and look at his g pawn. So I mean that's like a positional kind of move with multiple ideas. just kind of flexible and keeping lots of options open. But I haven't seen anything that's necessarily insanely forcing. Um, but I mean, I guess so. If I play it to e7, the next move, is it an actual threat to say that I'm coming to c5 next? Basically, is my play there strong enough to warrant calling it a threat? Um, so yeah, I get that queen to c5. I already said he can't block with the queen, or if he does, it's gonna get dicey with that check with the knight on f3. So, and he's not gonna want to step his king straight to the h file and then get tic-tacked with a knight takes f5 kind of thing and win a queen. So his other option would be blocking with the rook, playing the rook to f2 to block, and then huh. So what happens then? He blocks with the rook, it's pinned. So it's just this stupid knight at that point that's stopping my pawn from going through. Um, hmm. It's I mean, there's definitely, yeah. I'm not seeing the whole picture. I'm not seeing how I'm like just winning there. Talking about queen to e7 to c5. I think the king doesn't want to move anywhere, and the queen doesn't want to block. So the only other move would be to block with the rook. And then in that case, once my queen's on c5, pinning the rook to f2, I was saying I don't quite see what my killer follow-up is then. Seems like there should be some good stuff to play, though. It seems like it should be... Seems like it should be good. But yeah, that pesky knight. Okay, so I'm gonna switch gears from that queen e7 to c5 kind of stuff right now. I mean, yeah, and I could play queen e7, and he could play queen e3 and check and just be in there covering that diagonal before I ever get there. Before I ever even get there. So yeah, I got a little ahead of myself. I mean, there's some ideas, and I may still end up using some of them, or I might take a different route to get to that diagonal or something. But yeah, my main objective right now, as far as calculation, is no longer just trying to make that sequence work. So back to the drawing board a little bit. So what do we got? What do we got? Now I'm back to looking at my queen and rook battery and trying to get into h1 and what that's all going to be worth. Honestly, that could be it right now, though. Maybe that's just it, done and done. Maybe it is just knight f5. I mean, I looked at this all immediately and ruled it out because the king can walk to f2, and I'm like sacking the knight, but I'm not checkmating. But if I played knight takes f5, clearing the h file, attacking the queen, I get into h1. Presumably he plays e takes, or for tactical reasons he might need to take with the rook. Otherwise my queen will just get it. But yeah, he plays something takes on f5, and then queen h1. King's got to step to f2 and then rook h2. So now my major pieces got his first two ranks, but I don't have any more pieces. Um, so he's either got a step to e3 or e1 from f2. That is after my rook checks on h2. And then what do I got? Then I got a queen takes e4 kind of dealio with check. My rook on h2. The queen might not actually be taking on e4. There might not be a pawn there anymore after knight takes f5. But the queen would be gaining more ground on the king with checks to bear. See, yeah, it's the kind of thing that is, sexy looking, and there's definitely ideas there. Maybe I'm even like, maybe I'm checking on, maybe I try and lay a check on d1, and he's forced to take it or get mated, and then I promote a queen. And, there's all sorts of ways that sort of variation can lead to mates, but I don't see it yet, so I feel bad just playing. Like I'm going for 2,000. I'm trying to get this problem right no matter what. So until I calculate it to the end, I'm gonna be pretty reluctant to just play like a vaguely strong attacking move, because that's kind of that's what these problems are all about, is sorting vaguely good attacking moves from concrete shit. So let's see. Do I either try and calculate deeper on knight takes f5, queen h1, king f2, and try and find the mate and grind that out, make it work, or do I open up my search a little bit more again, consider a couple more moves, and then decide which one to calculate? I think I'm gonna scan, look for a couple more candidate moves, see if there's anything, maybe just some other move I want to do first before I, maybe there's some real tidy move that, maybe I just need to play king a8 before I proceed with this, and then everything will check out. So I'm just gonna kind of scan for a sec. Otherwise, I'm gonna go back to knight takes f5 and try and grind that puppy out. Okay, so one of the other things that I considered but never actually calculated was man, I'm blanking so hard. Instead of moving the queen, I was thinking about moving the rook. Okay, so yeah, the queen will stay defending the knight for the moment, and thinking about bringing my rook. Doesn't need to come to c8 to defend the pawn right now. If anything, I would bring it to d8, or potentially e8. But if it goes to d8, then I'm looking to come in and get on the first rank. The thing is, his rook, it just doesn't need to. It doesn't need to capture, and allow me to recap and make a queen on d1, unless I add another catalyst to the equation, add something else that makes him need to do that. Otherwise, my threat is rook takes rook, king takes rook. There is no. Now his king's just closer. Now his king's just closer to my passed pawn to gobble it, and I've lost one of my good pieces. So I haven't found any convincing reason to play rook d8 yet. I mean, yeah, the most forcing shit is knight takes f5. Okay, so if I'm talking about knight takes f5 now, what if he doesn't just calmly recapture? He plays queen f2, check, and hitting the knight. Um, so excuse me, it's getting late here. Um, so then I would have to step my king back or push a pawn forward. Seems a little sketchy to play b6 in that case. I don't want to totally open up my seventh rank. So I'd play king a8 maybe. Stay off those dark squares that are open. So king a8, and then say he plays, because at that point he can't play pawn takes or rook takes. He legally can't play rook takes through the queen, and if he plays pawn takes, then my queen will be checkmating on h1 because the queen occupies f2, which was the king's only flight square before. So he'd have to play queen takes, and then our queens are staring at each other on h7 and f5. But in that case, I'd be able to go down to h2 with my queen, because his queen where it sits defends h2. It would not from f5. So he's not able to play the queen takes after trying to do this little Zwischenzug. I don't know how to say it like a German, but um, Zwischenzug. Anyway, with queen f2 check. So yeah, his queen's not going to recapture the knight. His rook can't, so his pawn would have to take it back if he wants the material, which presumably he does. Actually, but again, for the same reason, he can't do that because the queen will be holding on to f2 and my queen's coming into h1 mating. So yeah, basically he just can't afford to do that that little zwish, hitting the knight and the king. So that's good to know. That makes the knight taking on f5 even more viable. That he doesn't, immediately refute it with a queen move. And yeah, and the knight's covering his other checking square on e3. So yeah, he doesn't have any bugs like that. And so now we're just back to the same old either rook or pawn takes on f5, queens coming into h1. And what's the firepower situation? Do we got enough for me to actually play this move with a clean conscience? Because yeah, I mean, if this was blitz, I would have played this ages ago. Um, but this is the kind of situation that I'm training for a longer tournament game. A move that looks pretty like this. If he sits down for a 20-minute think and finds some real good move, then now I'm busted. So it's time to get real with the calculation. Knight takes f5. Let's start, for simplicity's sake, with pawn takes. Say he wants to keep his connected passers, and he wants to keep his shit where it's at. Okay, so when I took, pawn took. Alright, so now queen comes into h1. Only legal move. It's going to be king f2. Follow that up with rook h2. And once again, my queen's on this diagonal, so he can't step to third rank unless he comes to the e-file. Can't stay on e2. The rook's cutting through. So he's on either e1 or e3. From either location, my queen would be able to come into e4, not capturing, because we assumed that he's already got that pawn on f5. So now my queen is up in here. Interesting. So maybe now my rook and my queen are teaming up on e2, and this could be the sort of situation that I land a major piece there, the knight's forced to take, and then I get to make a queen, a little queenie. That'd be cool. So yeah, so if he goes to e1 from that position that I talked about, then then queen e4 is going to look pretty powerful because that's going to slap a check on him. He can't step to d2. He can't step to d1. D2 is covered by the rook. D1 is covered by the pawn. Queen's got everything on the third, so he'd have to block with the queen or the knight. If he blocks with the knight, I'd take it with mate. If he blocks with the queen, I'd take it, and I still have all those threats. So, so yeah, if he goes to e1, I think that looks like it's just going to be mating. And so the other line to calculate, I'm just going back to the very beginning just to get that flow again. Knight takes f5, pawn takes. Oh yeah, I still got to calculate rook takes. Shit. Okay, well, hopefully after I calculate the king coming to e3, that will rule out pawn takes as a viable alternative. Honestly, it might not make a difference though. It might not make any difference. It makes some difference, but it might not. I might get to play the same basic moves. Knight takes f5, pawn takes f5, queen h1 check, king f2, rook h2 check, king e3 is what we're calculating now. So if king e3, now my queen can't do the take on e4 thing. But he would be abandoning the rook. From e1, the king would, because my queen's on h1 and his rook's on f1. So if the king would walk to e3, then I get to take the rook. He would get to take my rook, but then I would get to take his knight, and now my passed pawn is faster. So let me just think about this. Let me calculate this a little more, make sure I'm not missing anything, but it's looking like, queen checks on h1, king f2, rook checks on h2, king e3, and now my queen's on pre from his rook, so I'm either going to move it, but it doesn't look like there's anywhere to even move it without just, without it just being a trade. So I take the rook, he takes my rook, and I take his knight. That's all real, right? I think that's all true. That's all true stuff. Let me just make sure that he wouldn't have any perpetual then on the dark squares against my king. So he would be able to, after all of that, he would have captured my rook on h2. And now he wants to check my king. Yeah, so he'd have to lay a check from f2, and if he does that, now he's got no route on the h file down to h8 to keep any perpetual thing going. So, okay, so that would be winning for me still, I believe. So now the last thing to calculate is whether there's anything different with rook takes. And so obviously some stuff is going to be different because now that whole element of the queen and rook tension on h1 and f1 won't be a thing after the king goes to e3. So yeah, so let's take a look at this now. So yeah, we ruled out the Zwischenzug queen f2. We ruled out pawn takes after knight. We ruled out yeah, I mean, and I guess if he doesn't take the knight and he has no other good moves that I can tell, I would just be getting his knight and attacking his queen. He'd have to move his queen to some quiet square, and then I just still come into h1 or h2 and have this thing, but I also have a knight in the attack. So I'm going to go ahead and assume that he doesn't have some move. I'm going to go ahead and assume that I can play knight takes f5 if I calculate that rook takes f5 does not give him some miracle defense. So let's see. So rook takes f5, queen h1, king f2. So in this case, it's a new possibility that that the queen can even take on c1 now. Because yeah, the rook's not on f1, so I'd be able to immediately have the queen go snatch up his knight. I've gotten my material back. Yeah, I wouldn't even have to play. So yeah, so if rook takes, so I play knight takes f5, rook takes f5, queen h1, king f2, and I wouldn't play the rook to h2 necessarily. I mean, I may end up doing it, but in the variation I'm looking at of trying to grab the knight, then bringing the rook to h2 only puts it within the scope of his queen for taking it. So I'd be able to just play, yeah, the queen h1, king f2, and then queen takes c1, get my material back, and get ready to promote this little guy. Yeah, I think that's I think that's enough. I think I feel good enough about my calculation that I feel confident playing this move. So I'm gonna do it. Fingers crossed. All right, he grabbed it and he did it with the pawn. So I think just super quick. Queen h1, king f2, rook h2. If e1, I'm mating with all this nonsense here. And if e3, and I grab the rook, he grabs the rook, I grab the knight, and I'm promoting. So, all right, let's do it. All right, he goes there. Just going to give him another check. Okay, and he just takes it. So we got it. Awesome. So, yeah, so this says that that problem was rated 1995. So that's pretty high rated as far as problems that I've solved in the past on here. And I can sort of see why. There was somewhat of a high volume of things to calculate and make sure. He had a lot of little, I had to spend some time and calculate all the queen to f2 in betweener kind of stuff. But honestly, the moves that I ended up playing were the moves that I saw. If I would have been playing this in the blitz mode, I would have played the exact same moves 25 minutes ago. I just would have moved the knight out of the way, threatening the queen, and opens up the H file battery. I think when I first saw this problem, I said something like, oh, "Okay, well, this is nice. I already got this battery here on the H file." So yeah, I ended up using all of the ideas that I was gonna use, without even thinking. So in that sense, it's a little frustrating, but it also feels good that I was able to go through, calculate it all, and not just have the gut feeling that that attack should be right, but have the concrete mental validation that yes, I truly believe this is right, and I know what's going on. So that gave me 50 points. So I have successfully breached that 2000 wall. I'm at 2032 right now. So I think I've got something like I think I've maybe done 8 problems on this new account. So yeah, so I'm obviously, I'm boosting or whatever, but, I just got a 1995, a 2000 problem right, and now I'm 2000. So I'll take that as a 2K tactic norm or whatever. And yeah, I'm just gonna keep going from here, keep getting tactically stronger, um, and dominating my next tournament. So thanks for watching. Got the green light on another one. Good to go here. All right, peace.